Hello, students. Our lesson for today is on the topic bases. So, we'll be talking about bases today. Here are the learning objectives: definition of bases, classification of bases or alkalis, physical properties of bases or alkalis, chemical properties of bases or alkalis, as well as the uses of bases or alkalis. So let's start with the definition of a base. If I may ask, what do you think is a base? A base is a substance that reacts with an acid to form salt and water only. So you take note. Salt and water are the only products formed when an acid reacts with a base. So examples of bases include calcium oxide, potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, etc. So let's look at alkalis. An alkali is a substance which produces hydroxide ions when dissolved in water. And the hydroxide ions give an alkali its basic properties. So the hydroxide ions are what actually make an alkali act as a base. So you note this. Understand this when we talk about the classification of bases. Generally, bases can be classified based on solubility and based on ionizing capability. Based on solubility, we have soluble bases and insoluble bases. Soluble bases are metallic or basic oxides that are soluble in water. These oxides dissolve in water to form an alkali. So alkalis are soluble hydroxide. So a perfect example is sodium hydroxide. Insoluble bases, on the other hand, are metallic oxides and hydroxide that are not soluble in water. Insoluble bases are metallic oxides and hydroxide that are not soluble in water. A perfect example is copper 2 oxide. So we also have strong alkalis as well as weak alkalis. Strong alkalis are soluble bases that ionize completely in water to produce hydroxide ions and a positive ion. While weak alkalis, on the other hand, are soluble bases that ionize partially in water to produce hydroxide ion and a positive ion. So, as you can see, examples of strong alkalis are sodium hydroxide. We also have potassium hydroxide, while for weak alkalis, we have ammonium hydroxide. Next, we'll be talking about physical properties of bases / alkalis. Alkalis have bitter taste. They are slippery when touched. Alkalis turn red litmus blue, as you can see from the diagram. So these are the few physical properties of alkalis. Also know that concentrated forms of alkalis are also very, very corrosive. Next, we'll be talking about uses of alkalis or bases. Alkalis such as potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide are used in saponification, that is, soap making. Next, we'll be talking about calcium hydroxide. Calcium hydroxide is actually used in the manufacture of cement. It is also used to reduce acidity of soils. So soils that contain high acid content, we use solutions of calcium hydroxide to neutralize the amount of acid or basically reduce it. So you take note of that. Next, we'll be talking about magnesium hydroxide. Magnesium hydroxide is actually used as a laxative. Laxatives, they are drugs that aid digestion. So they tend to reduce constipation. So you take note of that. So magnesium hydroxide is actually used in making what is called laxative. Next, we'll be talking about ammonium hydroxide. Ammonium hydroxide, they are used as reagents in the laboratory to carry out analytical researches. So you take note of that. They're also used in making fertilizers, rayons, plastics, and dyes. So these are some of the uses of bases as well as what alkalis. So you take notes.